So you're a nation of 2 islands, so why wouldn't you call your national dish this? And welcome back to Cliffieland. This is Week in Country number 176 on our second attempt at cooking the food of every single country in the world. Tonight we're up to the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago, an island nation located in the Caribbean Sea just north of Venezuela, is made of 2 islands primarily, the larger island of Trinidad and the smaller island of Tobago. And technically it is in North America, even though it is that close to South America. It also shares maritime borders with Grenada and Guyana and Barbados, and it has a fascinating history which I really recommend you look up because it will make your head spin. Over the many years of colonial rule, the nation was controlled by, at one time or another, the British, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, and even the small duchy of Courland located in present-day Latvia. Look that one up, that'll surprise you. As you would expect with that much of a complicated history, it has a complicated people mix and a complicated cuisine. When the British controlled it as a colony, they created sugar plantations there, and for that they imported enslaved Africans, but shortly thereafter the slave trade was abolished by the British there, and instead they wound up bringing in indentured servants from South Asia, India primarily, and that has contributed to the combination of peoples which is very diverse and very, very interesting in the nation of Trinidad and Tobago, much like that you will find in Grenada and Suriname and Fiji, among others. This is obviously reflected in the food. The food is a wonderful combination of influences from Europe and Africa and Asia and East Asia and Creole and indigenous, with some British and French traditions thrown in. You'll find curries there and lots of things that considered the national dish, not just one thing. In fact, that made things a little bit complicated because we're this many countries into it, and I don't want to double up on things. No pun intended, you'll see what happens there in a minute. But there was a similarity among some of the national dishes. For instance, we did a version, controversial as it was because it didn't come out just right, of oil down back when we cooked Grenada. I suggest you check that video out. And back when we cooked Grenada, I wound up doing a dish which is their national dish and is also found here in Trinidad and Tobago called pepper pot. That was fascinating. I suggest you check that one out as well. We wound up figuring out what to do last time, so let's take a look and see how things went when we did things then. Well, now, 5 years ago on the Global Cooking Challenge, yes, I have slowed down a lot, I wound up cooking across 3 nights. And on the first night, I wound up doing a dish which was super delicious, though I wouldn't call it at all a traditional dish. It was a grilled duck breast with pineapple and pink peppercorn sauce. It was from a restaurant in Tobago, so while it was really delicious, I really didn't think that would be the right thing to be presenting here. And on the third night, I wound up making a Trini stewed chicken, which I served with orange rice. That was really delicious, but not so delicious as what we did on the second night, and that's what we're recreating here tonight. Because what we're doing here tonight is one of the things that's considered the national dish of Trinidad and Tobago, twin island nations, and it's called doubles. Get the pun? The best jokes are explained to you. What doubles is a chickpea masala sandwich, and it's a completely vegan dish, and it came out so well last time that I had to do it this time. By the way, I also served that with chicken skewers, which are fine, but we're not even talking about that now. That's enough of my talking. We need to see what goes into tonight's dish. For our doubles, or chickpea masala sandwich, we'll need 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast, 1½ teaspoons of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of ground turmeric, ½ teaspoon plus 1 tablespoon of kosher salt, 1/4 teaspoon of sugar, 3 tablespoons of canola oil plus more for frying, 1 large yellow onion, halved lengthwise and thinly sliced, 2½ teaspoons of curry powder, 2 cloves of garlic smashed, 6 sprigs of cilantro roughly chopped, 1 15-ounce can of chickpeas, or in our case, ½ cup of dried chickpeas soaked in water overnight with the water, 3 tablespoons of tamarind paste, and 1 Granny Smith apple. that looks like it's going to be good. And again, as always, let me remind you that these are not my recipes. You can find the original links below if you want to talk to the people who did those. And of course, never take this as being the best way or most traditional way to do a dish from any of these countries. Remember, this is just my little experiment. Should never be considered a substitute for seeing the people from the actual countries doing the actual food. Of course, if you're just getting started and aren't familiar with it at all, this isn't a bad place to start. In fact, you can watch me make mistakes so you don't make them too. In any case, I need to get cooking. In a large bowl, mix together the flour, the yeast, the ground cumin, turmeric, half a teaspoon of the salt, and the sugar, and whisk it together. Add 3/4 of a cup of warm water heated to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, and mix with a wooden spoon until a soft dough forms. Turn out the dough onto a floured surface. Knead the dough until it is soft and elastic, about 5 minutes. Lightly oil the dough with 1 tablespoon of canola oil and transfer it to a large bowl. Cover and transfer to a warm place and let it rise until it doubles in size, about 1.5 hours. Heat 2 tablespoons of canola oil in a saucepan over medium-high heat. Add the onions and curry powder and stir occasionally until the onions soften, about 15 minutes. Add the garlic, cilantro, and chickpeas and 1.5 cups of the soaking water. Bring the water to a boil over a high heat and reduce to medium and cook, partially covered, until the chickpeas start to fall apart, about 1.5 hours. Mash half of the chickpeas against the side of the saucepan with a wooden spoon, cover, and set aside. Once the dough is ready, divide the dough into 16 1-ounce portions and form loose balls. Place each dough ball between 2 sheets of paper and press the dough with your hands into an 1/8 inch thick disc about 6 inches in diameter. We used wax paper for this, but we probably shouldn't have. Parchment paper probably would have worked better. Pour 1.5 inches of canola oil into a 4-quart saucepan and heat over medium-high heat until the oil registers 325 degrees Fahrenheit on a deep fry thermometer. This works better if you have a deep fryer. Fry 1 dough portion at a time, inverting once with tongs until puffed, about 30 seconds. Transfer to paper towels and stack on a plate. Meanwhile, in a small bowl, whisk 3 tablespoons of the tamarind paste with half a teaspoon of curry powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin, a half a cup of warm water, and grate the Granny Smith apple on a box grater and stir to combine. Also, the recipe did not say where to include the 1 tablespoon of salt, so perhaps incorrectly we added it here. Then make the doubles. For each double, spoon 1 tablespoon of chickpeas, add the chutney, and top with another double and serve hot. Turn out? Well, it was really delicious, don't get me wrong, although there were a number of execution problems that were my fault and partly the fault of the recipe because they kind of left out certain pieces of information. Starting with the cooking of the chickpeas, I didn't really know how large a vessel to put that into. I wound up doing it in a large Dutch oven, and when I looked back on it, I probably should have done that in a smaller saucepan because there had been a smaller surface area and it would have allowed the chickpeas to stew in the liquid longer. As it was, the liquid evaporated too quickly and that kind of resulted in a change of the texture. So if I did that again, I would fix that. All that being said, the flavor was crazy good. It was so delicious. So I'm gonna give that one 4 out of 5 globes. It would be 5 if I hadn't made those mistakes. Every last part of it was just a burst in your mouth of flavor. I loved it so much, and it was completely vegan. So now I have something to serve my vegan friends when we finally have a dinner party once my vaccine immunity kicks in and we can get back to socializing again. Yay! So that does it for Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Island of Calypso. Check us out next time when we leave the Caribbean to go back to North Africa for the very last time to have the spectacular food of Tunisia. See you then. These are not my original recipes. Links to the original recipes and their authors can be found in the About section. If you have any thoughtful feelings or helpful suggestions about what I'm doing, feel free to sound off in the comments here. If you like what you see, like, subscribe, hit that bell to be notified when these videos are posted, and of course you can always follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Thanks for coming by. See you next time. Happy eating.